Good afternoon again. I hope you're all enjoying your lunch. Apparently you're all enjoying your lunch and conversation. May I have your attention as we welcome Glenn Mroz. Glenn Mroz is president of Michigan Technological University, and he will introduce our keynote speaker. President Mroz.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be able to introduce our luncheon speaker, the former governor of Michigan, John Engler. Governor Engler is known for being extremely talented, smart, and constantly focused on his goals. He was the youngest person to be elected to the Michigan House, running against incumbents that were perceived to be unbeatable prior to their upset losses. He moved on to the Senate, rising to the post of Majority Leader. When he became governor of Michigan, Michigan had a $1.8 billion deficit. 12 years later, he left office with the state having a $1.3 billion surplus. During his time as governor, he served as chair of the National Governors Association. He never shied away from making tough, controversial decisions. He knew the state budget at the detail of a director and was very supportive of higher education. And he had a non-public side of being the doting father of triplets. He is now the president and CEO of the Business Roundtable. This is an association of chief executive officers of leading U.S. companies which has a significant public policy influence in Washington, D.C. Governor Engler has maintained his strong interest in higher education, including how higher education can strengthen its partnerships with the private sector. Partnerships are, of course, the theme of this meeting. Governor Engler, it is our pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Mroz for a wonderful introduction, and I am pleased to be introduced by a president of Michigan Tech, one of my favorite schools. Michigan Tech is the place you always wanted to visit in the winter if you're in Michigan, and the Michigan people will know what that means. You drive in from their airport, and you'll see a pole, and you look up at the pole, way up there, and that kind of measures the highest point of the snowfall from the previous year. So, looking at the weather report this morning, it may well be snowing in Houghton this morning, I'm not sure. But that Michigan Tech, though, is an interesting school and probably a good place to start this afternoon, just to reflect. This is an amazing story, one university that captures really the sort of how U.S. education and the technical nature of education maybe has responded to the demands of a changing economy. Michigan Tech started out years back as a school of mines in the 1800s. Today it's a multifaceted research and education institution, and they work on projects ranging from robotics to agile microgrids, so it's a very different place. To my fellow Spartan, President Peter McPherson, I want to thank you for the invitation to come and join the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities today, and I certainly admire Peter's outstanding leadership of this organization. He's been a wonderful advocate, a very able and effective advocate for higher education, I think at a time when it's very, very important to our country's future. And that's what I hope to talk a little bit about today, because I think we've got a keen mutual interest in working together. And in fact, America, the kind of America that I think we want, is counting on us to do that. Now, as Spartans, though, I will say that Michigan State served as, I think, in many ways, the model for land-grant institutions that were sort of envisioned when Senator Morrill, we saw up on the screen earlier, and President Lincoln was signing that Morrill Act back in 1862. Founded in 1855, the Agricultural College of the state of Michigan. Originally opened with 5 faculty members, 63 students. They were in 3 buildings. They're all gone now, including the, at the time, state-of-the-art brick horse barn that they had. But now, in 2014, thousands of faculty, tens of thousands of students, and a lot of construction, some new construction. In fact, topping the list is a $730 million project, the facility for rare isotope beams, or FRIB, as it's affectionately known by the Spartan family. And so you've seen the transition speed of horse near the speed of light, and I think that's a pretty good metaphor for the progress of America's public and land-grant universities. Notably about the FRIB itself, it's a partnership, though, the Federal Department of Energy, Office of Science, the state of Michigan, and Michigan State University. And it's a partnership that's focused on, built around research. And it's the kind of research the United States has long excelled in. And it's something at the Business Roundtable where I am these days that is very much a topic of conversation. It's something that the CEOs of the Roundtable have a great appreciation for. I think they understand the economic value of research, basic and applied, and they recognize how much of it is done by the public and land-grant universities. And for many of the CEOs, they're actually directly involved in partnerships that are existing around and sort of excelling because of the research institutions. Many of their actual products today, you might say, came out of these laboratories once upon a time or came out of research that was conducted. And the CEOs are pretty knowledgeable about research. We're very proud. We've got 206 CEOs that are part of the Roundtable. But the member companies that they represent account for $158 billion annually in research and development. And just to put a framework around that, that's more than half the private sector R&D that gets done in the United States on an annual basis. So the footprint is pretty substantial. A lot of it's applied research, but again, as I suggest, much of that actually started maybe in one of your laboratories, one of your professors, somebody had an idea. So it's not much of a surprise that we strongly believe the funding of basic research is an essential function of the federal government, and it warrants robust bipartisan support in the political process. I think that the American Research Partnership involving government, universities, and business is actually directly responsible for millions of jobs and much of the wealth that's been created throughout our nation's history. And I believe that it is more necessary than ever, perhaps, that we recommit ourselves to this partnership in the years ahead. I've actually directly, I guess, experienced firsthand the benefits of this research partnership. I grew up on a farm in central Michigan. I watched my father, our neighbors, take advantage of the Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service, and so I want to offer congratulations on the centennial. And as we mark that centennial and reflect on its accomplishments, I think we also can take advantage of the celebration to reinforce the value of research. And if you consider this for a moment, basic research done by the ag experiment stations across this nation, and then the application, the on-farm application in growing crops, raising livestock, has made a substantial impact, not just here, but indeed in the world. If you think about America and the world, pretty much the result of this cooperation, maybe 2%, I think it's not 2% anymore, a little less than that of our entire U.S. population is probably directly involved in farming. The agribusiness world's a little bit bigger than that, but that enterprise is largely capable of feeding the world. I mean, we could produce enough food, if necessary, to do that almost. It's really something that is a success story without parallel in many ways in human history. And I have another very personal reason. Not only do I grow up on the farm and watch this and benefit from it, but my very first paying job off the farm was for the Cooperative Extension Service. It's a long time ago, but I can still remember I visited a lot of vegetable gardens that summer and looked at the 4-H'ers projects and had them explain what they were doing, making sure they were getting properly ready for the fair. So one final thought on this incredible and productive research partnership. We're going to have a new Congress. It's going to be a Congress, I believe, with new leadership that's going to convene in January. So what's our job and our responsibility? I think it's to inform these policymakers about the importance of the partnership and why it is central to economic growth in America. Not just what we've done already, not the success stories, but what's on the horizon. Because every time I talk to a president, and a couple at the table where I'm seated today, but anywhere I go, and I still in this job get to travel a little bit, everybody's got something that's incredibly interesting that's going on, something they're very proud about, something they think has significant potential. And I'm from an organization, we're all in on growth. If somebody said, what's the Business Roundtable do? The number one thing we want to do is advocate for greater economic growth in America. We think that is the solution. That's how you deal with income inequality. This is how you move the nation forward. This is how you address and solve problems. So we're all in on economic growth, and we've been enduring an underperformance, at least as measured by GDP, that's unacceptable. GDP growth has simply been too slow. Instead of being comforted that we're maybe this year going to fish out at 2.5% GDP growth, coming out of the recession that we endured in 08, 09, we should be 2 points higher as a goal for sure, and we should be working hard to achieve that. So the recovery's been too weak, the incomes certainly are too low, the jobs too few, and I think the number one benefit of cooperation in Washington is that we can get economic growth jump-started, we can restore confidence, and that will be a big part of spurring growth. The reason that's important is obviously we've got some vested interest in how the benefits of growth, that growth dividend, gets invested in many ways. I think we can argue that if you want a bigger growth dividend, talk to us. I think that coming here today, one of the reasons I was anxious to come is that I think that we're really united on a really key agenda item. And so you say, well, gee, how can we fail? All the universities, all the business of America. Well, in some ways, we're almost the victim of our own success. I mean, it doesn't, this is my theory at least. I mean, I was just at Michigan State. They were announcing a big endowment drive last weekend. Universities have hundreds of millions of dollars in endowment campaigns, over $1 billion, the latest one at MSU and others, big campaigns. The 200 plus companies at the Roundtable, their revenues are over $7.4 trillion. So I almost think that creates a little envy. And maybe what it does even worse is a little sense of complacency. We must be doing pretty well. Got all that, able to raise all that money, able to have all those profits. But so you get to the federal budget, they look around, they say, well, gee, we're not doing so well. The entitlement spending kind of crowding out the rest of the domestic priorities, including research. And we got people kind of look at us and say, well, you're kind of on your own, or you're going to have to make do. You're doing well enough. I think that while this makes our task a bit harder, I certainly think it's more necessary than ever. We need this growth, and so we have to make the case that we can't abandon a strategy that's worked very well for a very long period of time. And I think also at the same time, it's also how we fix some of the fiscal problems that the nation confronts. There's a big difference between 4% GDP growth and 2% GDP growth in terms of federal revenues and what's available to invest. The other part of the future is obviously, I think, an inescapable fact today that the future is going to belong to those who have the best talent and the best research. And that's a future that we should win. I want us to win that future. You work every day to make sure that we can win that future. And I think we need a partnership in the government, frankly, at the federal and at the state level. I mean, it's not, I know that, tuitions come up a little bit. I'm not talking about coming up, I'm talking about coming up in conversation. But the reality is the declining investments at the state level in many states and static investment at the federal level, it's not very helpful for accomplishing what we need to do. Now, there's another, maybe sort of, how do you make this case? I think we get a lot of help out of some work that's been done up at Harvard by professors Michael Porter and Jan Rifkin. We've worked with them a little bit, but they've been working for a couple of years on a U.S. competitiveness project. And one of the things they did as part of that project actually was talk to 7,000 or so alumni about U.S. competitiveness to assess where we're doing well, where we're knocking the ball out of the park still, and where we're falling short. Higher education comes off very well. Good story to tell. It's perceived by the alumni as still a great American strength. Now, this is a global survey, too, so not all the respondents are here. About half are actually scattered around the world. So in this survey, higher education got cited as a plus, and research in particular also as a particular strength. But there were some other warning flags that pop up in any kind of a survey, as you might imagine, and some of them dealt with aspects of higher education, not all of it at the university level, but skilled labor force skills, workforce skills, was found to be a strength, but a deteriorating one. In other words, we're losing the advantage we've enjoyed. The K-12 system, as you may know, and certainly would suspect, found not to be a strength, was considered a weakness and one that was deteriorating. So a weakness getting weaker. Now at the Business Roundtable, I think we are seeing our CEOs get much more involved again, re-engaged, if you will, in the education agenda. And there's a sense that there should be no defense of educational weakness at any level. There shouldn't be any tolerance for that, we've got to get a strategy in place, and we've got to execute on that strategy. At the K-12 level, we're spending about $700 billion a year as a nation. Interestingly, to put that in perspective, I gave you a big number on R&D. The annual spend on the K-12 system is 4 times that. It seems massive, and it is. Just last week, we had a meeting of about, we had about 130 people, but 50 or so were employers. They represented major companies. They were from all sectors of our economy. So we had some senior vice presidents for human resources at companies having 50,000, 80,000 employees. They told us this, that their companies are having trouble finding people who can write well, who can work as a team, who have basic problem-solving skills. One executive stated in her company, only 1 in 8 applicants is deemed qualified to be interviewed. So the ability to read, write, do math, solve problems, I don't think that's asking too much. And clearly the basic skills alone aren't enough. I've mentioned that public universities, what an incredible change that's transpired if we go back from the 19th century agricultural-based economy to today's 21st century information digital age, if you will. The change has been profound. The speed of the change and it seems to be accelerating, but it's literally been mind-boggling. And business today, it's not just across the state border that you worry or another region of the country. It's indeed fully global in terms of the competition. And the struggle to keep up is conducted with the full knowledge that if you fail to adapt, it may well mean your demise. Now, I think it's a bit different at the academy. I mean, the rate of change is certainly, I would say, varied among institutions. Some lead the way. Others would seem to be slower to respond. But there's no question, wherever you are on that continuum, you've got some very hard choices ahead. I think there's incredible pressures on leaders of higher education. Perhaps is why tenures of university presidents now looks a little bit more like tenures of CEOs at companies. Not quite so long. I mentioned affordability, concerns about access, about graduation rates, quality and value, increasingly, not that conversation is just not confined to the campus, but it's taking place in the popular press as well, in the communities, and yes, in the boardrooms. And this won't be a surprise to anybody in this room. This is a room full of leaders, but I think what might be surprising is some of the perceptions. This conversation does get heard, and it does have an impact, and perceptions of higher education change a bit. There's a Gallup Lumina Foundation survey that was released earlier this year. In that survey, 84% of business leaders say the amount of knowledge a candidate has is very important in hiring decisions, but just 9% of the business leaders say where their candidate received the degree is very important in hiring decisions. That was a little bit surprising. The same survey, only 28% of the employers said a candidate's major is very important. Now, as a father of 3 college sophomores, I'm suggesting that 100% think that's really important. I'm trying to keep that statistic a little bit under wraps there, but the one who's the electrical engineering student, she's going to do fine. But the English and the history students they may be in the support system for the other one. I'm not sure. We'll see how this all works out. The very perceptive head of the Lumina Foundation is a good friend named Jamie Mroz. And Jamie, he summed it up this way. This is a quote from him. "College degrees and other credentials are more important than ever, but times have changed, and the vast majority of employers in America put acquired skills far ahead of alma mater or major when it comes to hiring." Now, when you hear that phrase, there's that little bit of that quote that talks about other credentials. And I think we're hearing a lot more about that these days. Other credentials means to me, when I hear that, it's reflecting what I think is some movement toward, and this may not be the main campus four-year university problem or challenge yet, but it sure is there in every way for, say, a community college or for technical schools. But other credentials is sort of a reflection that there's a growing demand for competency-based education and training. And in some of the technical areas, there's a great desire to have those competencies at least defined in part with some pretty strong business input. The marketplace is expanding in terms of what's offered, in terms of who's offering it. This morning, and you see evidence of this almost every day. I turned on Squawk Box this morning, and there was Jack Welch holding forth. He was the guest host, boasting of a 40% increase in enrollments at Strayer University in the Jack Welch MBA program. Now, if you know Jack, you know he's prone to touting what he believes in. But he was very proud of this growing increase and how well he thinks that his program that he's behind at Strayer has captured what the MBA really needs to know. But the choices, regardless, they're multiplying. Universities are actively pursuing some very different, some very innovative strategies. And as I suggested, others are probably playing catch up. But the bottom line ends up for students, many more choices. Students themselves are going to be very different because not only are we going to continue to have those on a path like the Engler girls where they come right straight through, but you're going to have a lot of others who are in a lifelong pursuit of learning or to be coming back at various times for varying amounts of education. There are going to be many more unique and blended programs, I think, some of which are going to be heavily influenced by employers. Recently, AT&T, that's the organization headed by my chair, Randall Stevenson, announced a partnership with Georgia Tech where they're doing an online degree specifically targeted at some of the AT&T employees, but it will be open to others as well. But the whole thing is sort of worked out by the school and the company. One of the things that's going to happen, though, is providers of these educational options, these alternatives, are going to be pretty eager to prove their program's value. And I think that focus is obviously going to be not just on the students, but I think it's also going to be on employers who are seeking the acquisition of specific skills. And you've got marketing is going to go in all kinds of different ways as these as universities change and learning options expand, I think there's a growing focus on competencies, and I think it will likely be accompanied by employer hiring then that starts to shift and maybe bases itself more on knowledge and skills, as opposed to just a strict credit hours and degree. And I picked up the Wall Street Journal this morning. See, I mean, every time you go somewhere, here's what college can teach the aspiring entrepreneur in the business section today. So, I mean, you're under pressure. You're putting the pressure on each other. This is not, I think, about to change. I think it will only intensify. One of the things that hasn't changed very much, but I think, as I'm suggesting, is going to change is that's how HR departments at companies handle themselves. Because I think it's been pretty easy to screen for something by saying bachelor's degree plus 5 years experience or some limiting to keep the doors from being flung open and everybody rushing in. But we see and hear a lot more from the upper management that we're not happy with the way this has been going, and we're thinking of how we might change this in the future. So I think, again, you're going to see some effort where HR departments are going to talk a little bit differently and maybe even select a little bit differently. There's always going to be a minimum threshold. One of the other partners, I'm not here to talk about them today, but if we look at all of when we talk to the K-12 world, we say, really, your product is going 3 places, basically. It's kind of coming, a lot of it's going to higher education. The rest of it's coming to the workforce, and big chunks go in the military. Over in the military side, we were talking to one of the recently retired top people in the Department of Defense was by, and he said, here's our problem. 50% of our applicants for military can't get in physically. 50% can't get in academically. So you do the math on that and combine those two. Our field is 1 in 4 young Americans would be possibly in the applicant pool, and from that, we have to have our volunteers. That's a pretty significant diminution. Well, we have an economy today where everybody's going to have a skill, because if we're going to do what we need to do in terms of allowing people to move up economically, we're going to do what we need to do in terms of bringing people back into the workforce. It's dependent on skills. There just aren't the opportunities for unskilled labor today to really get ahead. And while you'll read in the paper that there's a movement to maybe have a strike so that we can get McDonald's workers and Burger King workers up to $15 an hour, that isn't exactly an economic growth strategy, nor is simply trying to raise the minimum wage. That is not where we want to go. I heard one of the governors recently give a talk, and he said, truly, do we think that mom and dad are sitting around home, or in many cases today, just the single parent saying to daughter or son, gee, do well, work hard, and maybe you too can get a higher minimum wage for your career. That's not where we want to be as a country. And so I think we have to be, from the employer community, a lot clearer about what it is we're seeking, what it is we're desiring. That's a lot of the work we're doing at the Business Roundtable, although I would say most of that tends to be focused toward the community college, toward the high school level. But there's an awareness that as you struggle with how you graduate students, we could double, clearly, graduation rates at universities if we simply graduated the students we admitted. But then there's also the problem that in many community colleges, a significant proportion of their enrollees are people with baccalaureate degrees and a lot of student debt who are now trying to get a job, trying to get skills so they can get a job to pay off the loans. So I think we've got an opportunity for some significant work together. I think that some of these new learning options ought to be heavily influenced in their development by employers. That really will represent progress through partnerships. It's very exciting today to see some of this underway. And there are many examples, but I brought a couple today that I'm aware of because they're work that's being done and learning that's being done that some of our member companies are very much involved with, where they've been very open and very engaged. University of Maryland College Park campus, they have an advanced cybersecurity experience for students, the acronym ACES, that's where that's located, and the Business Higher Education Forum, which Peter and a number of the presidents here in the room have been involved with, and we will certainly lend our support for that. It's not something that's at the Roundtable, but it's something that we heartily endorse and are excited about. So when we work with the forum, they're talking about how do you facilitate these conversations. The ACES partners are such companies as Northrop Grumman, and they're led very specific CEO, Wes Bush, who got involved personally and really tried to make this happen. The state of Maryland, some of the local governments at the county level, and again, Maryland. And what Grumman said is we need applicants with specific competencies to work in cybersecurity, which unfortunately today is a growth industry in our nation and globally. But so they put the ACES program together actually with the University Honors College to achieve the flexibility and the independence they need, and I think also possibly, truth be told, to avoid some resistance they had at the departmental level in the campus. That probably never would happen to any of the deans that you work with, but could have happened maybe at Maryland, so they kind of went around the corner through the Honors College. But here's what Wes Bush said about that program. For the students, the ACES program represents a competitive advantage in the quest of employment after graduation. Employment in fascinating, important, and well-paying work. And the secret to the program's success has been the deep involvement of industry experts with the professors and the academic experts in designing curriculum and required courses. Another example can be found in northeastern Ohio. Their manufacturing is continuing a renaissance in my opinion, which with the energy advantage the nation has can continue to be extended in the coming decades. But Siemens recently made a $440 million PLM software grant to Youngstown State. And the idea was the incorporation of 3D printing in mainstream American manufacturing. Now, the theory, again, with the program gives the students hands-on experience in fields like robotics design, computer-aided engineering, additive manufacturing. And you've got companies like Siemens, Alcoa, Dow. They're working with community colleges as well. There's some intensive apprenticeship programs that I think are coming back into favor, providing some opportunities for students where the four-year degree isn't actually the preferred option in that case. It may well be what is done as the skills are acquired and the determination is needed, there's made that even more formalized education is necessary. But I think you're going to see sort of the laddering of credentials take place much more in the future. And a good deal of that will actually involve work along the way. Now, these companies that I've mentioned today, they're all BRT member companies, but they're by no means the only companies, and there are many others, not nearly the size of some of the membership that we have, that are keenly interested in this. They're interested in education, they're interested in training, they're interested in working with and understanding the paths where public and land-grant universities can take the lead, need to take the lead. I mean, you must take the lead, I guess. But part of that leadership, hopefully, will be to recognize that there are, and these new options that are being created, and there are many of them, that are necessary if we're going to respond to the changing the technology, the speed of change, the global competition, to be understanding what the competition is requiring today, and what we have to do to win and compete. So my point today, if there's one message, is that I think the business community stands ready to help. I think the business community is ready to roll up its sleeves and get to work, not just on the research agenda in terms of the federal priority that has to be, but on I think, the much tougher ongoing work that is not going to end anytime soon, where we start talking about how we really are maximizing the value of the investments that are being made. So the business leaders and the companies that are represented by the Roundtable certainly know that the future we desire is possible, but know that it's a lot greater, and the potential for success a lot greater if we work together. So, and the institutions in this room today will be the ones that will lead the way. Successful partnerships will make us stronger, and that can only be good for America, and it can only be fantastic for the people who call America home. So I wish everyone good luck. Thanks for having me in today to spend a little bit of time with you on what I consider a very important topic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Governor Engler, thank you very much for being here today and for your comments, reminding us that U.S. innovation and U.S. competitiveness depend on talent development, and that our universities have a major role to play in that talent development, and that in that talent development, our partners at both the state and federal level also have a part to play as partners. So thank you very much again. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Randy Woodson, who's Chancellor of North Carolina State University and currently Chair of the APLU Board of Directors. Randy.
Thank you, Bernadette. It's been a very busy year for APLU, and as chair of the board, I've gotten a chance to see firsthand the outstanding work of our president, Peter McPherson, and his team on behalf of all of the members of APLU. I think all of us here at this conference understand firsthand the challenges we face in public higher education. And I think we all take comfort, at least I know I do, in the hard work that our association does on our behalf. We've worked hard over the last year on issues that Congress has brought to our attention, whether it's the commercialization of technology and intellectual property and some of the critical questions that are being asked of us, the task force that Peter has formed to bring us together around these issues. It's been a great time for us to use our hard work over the years in accountability that is front and center for the conversation about higher education, and APLU and the member universities are ahead of the curve in this regard. So we're constantly working, and I'm very proud of the board and equally and perhaps even more pleased with the leadership that we've had consistently from Peter McPherson. So thank you all for joining us for the conference. We have more to come. My official task today is to pass the gavel, thank God. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity, and it's somewhere around, to pass the gavel to Jim Clements from Clemson University. And except for the fact that his team was not very kind to the NC State Wolfpack, Peter's been a great colleague on the board, and I'm looking forward to his service as chair. So, Jim, are you here? Thank you, sir. Congratulations, man. You got it.
Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you for your leadership and for your friendship. As I said in our little promotional video, I believe I have some very big shoes to fill. I think all of us here today would agree that you did a wonderful job as chair of the board. Would you all please help me thank Chancellor Woodson? So for me, it will be an honor to serve APLU and all of you in this new role. I'm also honored that I had the opportunity to share this time today with Governor Engler. Thank you, sir, for your very insightful remarks and for your commitment to fostering collaboration between business and higher education and your support of funded research. APLU represents nearly 240 member institutions, systems, and affiliate organizations. Collectively, our institutions are educating more than 6 million students and awarding more than 1 million degrees per year while conducting more than $40 billion in annual research. APLU plays an increasingly important role as a voice for higher education, for our institutions, for our faculty, our staff, our students, and the communities we serve. APLU's goal is to support the world's best public higher education system and to help all of us fulfill our mission of teaching, research, and service. In my opinion, APLU exists to help all of us make a difference in our states, in the nation, and across the world. And isn't that why we all got into higher education in the first place? To make a difference, right? However, APLU is only as strong as its membership. So I encourage all of you to continue to be involved and engaged after the meeting is over. Our agenda reflects some of the nation's most critical issues, such as reaching more underserved populations, closing the innovation deficit, fostering greater transparency and accountability, increasing degree completion, and increasing public support for institutions and our students. To achieve these goals, it will take the best thinking, and we must work together to make real progress. I hope that all of you are finding the sessions to be filled with numerous ideas that you can take back to your home campuses. And I want to personally thank everyone who has been involved in planning this very informative meeting. I look forward to working with all of you in the upcoming year. Please be sure to join us tomorrow morning right here at 7:15 a.m. for the second annual APLU Institutional Awards Breakfast. Thank you again. The meeting is now adjourned.